think you can hear me now. Yes. Thank you for the invitation to be here. Thank you for being here. What a pleasure to be in a country that's powered almost 100% by renewables. I can really subscribe to a lot of what Mary just said, and really this idea of branding as being as branding as what you are, not as what you say you are, is also fundamental to my understanding of what branding is all about, what energy branding is all about. I started out my career as a journalist, and you know that journalists are always a little bit skeptical towards marketing people. So I was, in my youth, I was reading Naomi Klein, and I thought of branding as something, you know, sort of a very tactical discipline to basically create an image. But having worked with branding in public institutions and companies, associations, I find that branding is really one of the most powerful vehicles to change who you are, to change how people perceive you, but also your self-perception and what you stand for. And I'll say a little bit about how I've been doing that in other contexts and how we're working with that in EURELECTRIC, where I work as a Secretary General now. EURELECTRIC, for everybody's background, is the industry body of the European electricity industry. We represent around 3,500 companies across the value chain, turnover of 200 billion euros per annum. So it's a big industry, it's a big industry association, and as you may know, these are traditionally very conservative bodies as well. We're looking at that, we're trying to change it, and we're trying to actively embrace the new energy future. But just a little bit of background. I used to work for Connie Hedegaard, the climate commissioner, who served 5 years in the European Commission, and that was just in the wake of the climate summit in Copenhagen, which some of you will know didn't go quite as we planned. So I think it's safe to say that in those years after Copenhagen, there was a little bit of a climate depression, and there was still this was still, in my view, part of the early stages of the transition, where there was this feeling that climate action was all about foregoing. It was all about giving up the good life to do the right thing. So there was sort of a disconnect between the ethically right thing to do and the good life. And that's what we tried to change with a branding campaign, basically saying climate action is about creating the good life. It's about creating a world you like. So we made a big pan-European campaign under this slogan, where we basically showed how climate action drives value for consumers, for cities, for individual families, and how it basically also can act as a motor of the economy. Essentially, this idea of taking, let's say, your self-perception, your identity, and changing it through a branding exercise was the same thing I did when I came to Wind Europe, where I was the chief policy officer for a couple of years. It's the industry association of the wind industry in Brussels, and when I came, we were an industry, or at least an association, that was very much perceived as a voice of academia, the voice of let's say, the green NGOs. We were very technical in everything we said, and we were not at all perceived as that big industry we were already at that time. So what we really did was to make a big rebranding campaign, which was about changing our outside image, but we also made the entire, let's say, inside operation different. We turned the association upside down, and over 2 years we created a turnaround where we went from an association where members, the big industrial members, were leaving us, to becoming the best industry association in Brussels, announced by third party. So I think really that if you take seriously the idea that branding is about the identity and about the DNA of an industry or a product, you also really see how it relates fundamentally to the value that industry or product is attached to and providing. Same story in the power industry today. I think the brand of the electricity industry has traditionally been one that's been very much about security of supply, being the backbone of the industry, being cost effective and being industrial. And what we found out and what we increasingly see is that customers just stop liking that. They don't like us anymore. We see people, when I go different places in Europe, in Germany, you'll have people demonstrating outside the board meetings of the big companies because their value proposition is not in line with what customers want. And that's what we need to change. And that's what we're doing in EURELECTRIC these days, trying to basically revisit our value proposition and say, how do we basically create a value proposition, create an industry that's aligned with the future that customers want, exactly as Mary was saying. So basically, what we did in EURELECTRIC is we set out to say, let's make this change. Let's try to really make a fundamental change from within and make it more than just a communications campaign. Let's commit, let's change, and let's connect. And the idea is that our rebranding, our reinvention of EURELECTRIC really started with a commitment of the industry of doing things differently. So in April this year, we came out with a statement where we said, after 2020, no new coal plants in Europe. And this was, I think, a very effective way to start a campaign because rather than just saying we're changing or focusing communication elsewhere, we were putting concrete commitments, concrete change on the table. And since then, we've continued to drive this. We have basically we have teamed up with renewables, created a new let's say cross-sectoral industrial alliance with the people that can help drive electrification across the society and increase the use of this clean energy carrier. And towards the end of the year, we'll try to round up the entire industry around a new vision that basically points towards the future and commits ourselves to basically accelerating the transition, to investing aggressively in the new technologies, and to really put the customer at the center and try to empower customers in this process. So this is essentially how I believe branding should be done, thinking about the core of what we are and what we do, changing that, and that basically drives then also the change in the perception, and also it drives a change in the value proposition, and in the end that is what it's about, basically making sure that our value proposition is aligned with the customers. Thank you.